Welcome to the Nutmeg Tavern. It is Friday afternoon. It's a wonderful Friday afternoon, at least compared to yesterday. I love Fridays, and this week has gone very, very quickly. We've got a lot to cover today, so let's get started. Again, welcome. Have a seat. Find a spot. You can order a drink. Who's behind the bar? Ryan's behind the bar. You can order a drink, but you can only order what's actually on the menu, which is just one thing today. Punch.
We're having punch.
Punch is on the menu. On the other side of the time vortex wormhole, Aaron is on the console, making all that technical stuff work because it broke as usual, and he had to last minute get out the mallet and
I got it, though.
make it work. And in the chat, taking questions, Kyle.
Hello.
Is the man back there. So if you want to try to get a question in or whatnot, Kyle is the man. Ooh, look at that. Looks like lemonade. Is it lemonade, Ryan?
It's not lemonade.
It's not lemonade.
It's punch.
It's punch. Yeah. And it's got a nice little stack of nutmeg on top. Thank goodness.
I made it sweeter than I would typically have it, too.
Yep.
Just for you.
It is.
You always enjoy my drinks. So.
I do. I'm glad you don't make them your strength, because I wouldn't be able to make it through the live stream.
That one's really sweet, though.
Oh, it is.
I
It's
tried
sweet.
it.
It's sweet. It's citrusy. It's got some. And this is a pretty light mix, isn't it?
Let's see if you can guess what else in it.
There's citrus in it, obviously. I think he said he had to go get limes, so I'm cheating there. It's got limes. It's got water. It's got obviously sugar and nutmeg, and then it's probably got some fancy hunk of something like some alcoholic beverage in there.
It's got rum.
It's got rum in there.
Yeah.
What is that it? Did
That's
I get
it.
it all?
Yeah.
It's simple, very simple, and very common. A lot of the drinks that you hear about in the 18th century, they're drinking these different alcoholic beverages like rum or whatever, but most of the time it seems like they're mixing them. Very simple mixes, but all very kind of similar to this punch.
Yeah, there were. I went down a punch rabbit hole this week, and there are a lot of very, very difficult ways to make it. And we'll get there in the live streams. I think it'll be fun.
I think we're going to need a hot punch next week, don't you think?
Sure. Yeah, hot punch. That sounds great. But I wanted to start with the punch, a basic punch.
Yeah.
And they said it was coming from West India, and it was named punch for the Aboriginal name for the number 5, punch.
Right.
It has 5 ingredients.
Yep.
And it has acid, so you're looking at lime or lemon. It has water, rum, a sweetener of some sort. They used just plain sugar this time.
Sure.
And it has a spice, and it called for nutmeg.
Nutmeg.
Or heat of some kind. I think it'd be interesting to experiment with some kind of pepper.
Wow.
Yeah.
Whoa. I don't know if I'm ready for that.
Crazy.
Thank you, Ryan. We'll come back and touch on this again, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. I got good news, bad news. Good news, bad news for you. We'll start with the good news. Even though we didn't think, well, this isn't the right mug to show, but we've got a Nutmeg Tavern mug that has the stag on it. That red one there is the stag design that we usually do for Christmas. Last Christmas we had the green and the red, the big ones like that. This Christmas we'll have 2 new mug colors, mug styles, and we didn't think they were going to be available for Christmas. I adjusted the order. We should have them for Christmas. That's good news. So if you want some really interesting, fun Nutmeg Tavern mugs with the stag jumping, and they'll be, I think they're going to be this shape but a little bit smaller. Very nice, beautiful pieces that we'll be getting just in time. We'll talk about it in the live stream when it happens. Bad news, people have been asking about the calendar this year. So for the past 4 or 5 years, we put together a calendar. They had recipes in them. This year, we're not going to have a calendar. I hear a big "oh" out there, I know. A lot of people really enjoy the calendars. They take a lot of time out of our schedule to prep those. And this year we weren't able to do that. We wanted to experiment with some other pieces this year anyway. So it'll be a different, fun piece that comes in the mail. If you're on the mailing list, you've ordered things in the past year or two, you'll get one of those new pieces in the mail. It won't be a calendar, but it'll still be a fun piece in the mail.
It's still exciting.
Yes, I really enjoy putting it together. It was a lot easier and quicker to put together this year, so because we just didn't have all that time. Do you have anything on your that's not on my list, Ryan? That I need to tell you?
I think I did, but it fell out. We can go to Kyle for some questions, and I'm sure I'll remember.
Yes. Okay. Good.
All right. How did cabins get insulated / retain heat?
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Monday's video is going to be really good.
Oh yeah, Monday's video will be on. It'll be what we went and shot down at Virginia. That was last week, right?
Yeah,
That was
geez.
only
Yeah,
that
I
was
know.
a week ago,
Yeah.
Yeah.
or like a week ago Monday.
It was a week ago
right.
on Monday, too. Well, we got
Right.
back on,
I'm sorry.
We got back on Thursday or something, didn't we?
no, Tuesday night. So John and I went down to Virginia to Martin Station to
That's
film
right.
some stuff. And we left, I think, around 2 o'clock on Monday and got back at around 11:30 on Tuesday night.
It was a flying trip.
Yeah.
How fast can you do it? That's how fast we did it. Sleep? We don't need sleep. Let's just drive. Let's go. Let's go.
It's for suckers.
The pumpkin bread video was one
Yeah.
of the videos that was shot.
That's right. We
Thanks
shot
for
pumpkin
watching
bread.
that
That's
one,
right.
everyone.
And then the one that's coming out on Monday, which is how we got to this part of the conversation.
We'll answer this question.
Right. We'll
Like I said,
answer
tune
this
in Monday.
question.
Right.
And that's
You want to go into it a little bit?
well, I wanted to talk about the idea of insulation.
Oh,
So,
sure.
Insulation, the logs themselves are really thick, and they are insulation in and of themselves versus building a post and beam building, which is another building style in the time period where you'd put up beams and then you'd have like a clapboard on the outside. Those didn't have any real insulation. You had to really pack the walls with stuff or whatever insulation wise. But a log cabin, well, you've got these logs that are 8 inches, 10 inches, 12 inches thick. That's a lot of wood, and wood by itself is somewhat insulative. So you do get some great insulating properties just straight up, as long as you can plug all those holes between the
that's
holes,
the
right?
thing. And
Right.
the holes in the roof and the holes in
Hey, let's not talk about holes in the roof.
I'm just saying.
Not a single one.
There's cabins are drafty creatures in the time period. That's
Yes.
all it is to it.
Right. Well, and any house is.
Sure.
I mean, most houses were pretty drafty up until about 1980. So, but that's that's the nature of the beast. Go ahead, Kyle.
John, can you please explain barm?
Okay, barm. A lot of recipes in the 18th century will call for yeast, or they'll call for barm. And when they're calling for yeast, they call for yeast and they say something like a pint of yeast, right? And today we think of yeast as little tiny granulated kind of pellets or whatever those things are. The way yeast comes, sometimes it'll come in little foil packets, or if you're a big yeast user, you might buy it in a brick like you would buy, coffee, or you would buy it in a jar. And it pours out like a real light version of sugar. Obviously, that you're not going to use that by the pint or by the quart, right? So yeast in the time period was, or barm in this case, was a liquid yeast, and that usually came from the brewer. It was a side product that the brewer who's brewing beer, he's going to have all this extra yeast after he brews his batch of beer. He'll put in a little bit of yeast at the beginning of he'll pitch his yeast at the beginning of the fermenting process. That yeast starts to replicate and make more and more of itself and start to eat up all the sugars in the beer. And then all this either floats to the top as kreuzen, depending on the kind of beer you're making, or lager, or it sinks to the bottom. And that you can either, the type that floats to the top after this beer is almost done doing all its eating up of the sugars, they'd scrape all that stuff off the top, and he'd use that for the next batch of beer, but he's it reproduced itself 10, 20, 30 times over. So he's got a lot left over, and he's going to sell that to people that live in the neighborhood as their yeast for making bread. So they're using exactly the same yeast for bread as they would for beer. And also, when you get done with that beer, if yeast fell to the bottom, there is sort of dead yeast or inactive yeast at the bottom of different kinds of beer. And you would use that same thing too. In Amelia Simmons' cookbook, she talks about emptins. And that's what she's talking about, that stuff that's down at the bottom of the barrel. You can usually perk that stuff back up. You give it a little bit of sugar, give it a little bit of flour, and it will come back to life and start reproducing again. You can use that for your baking. Problem is that if you're doing beer, you've used hops in your brewing, and your yeast can be very hoppy. So bread in the 18th century and the 19th century tended to have could have a very hoppy flavor to it, and people were used to very hoppy bread. There's even
I
this.
don't see a problem with this at all.
Well, I mean, some people really enjoy hops as a flavor. I enjoy the smell of hops. Boy, I smell hops all day long. I don't know if I want to eat hoppy bread, but maybe. And it was so much so that there were some recipes in the early 20th century that even talked about adding hops back into breads to get that old bread flavor.
It's funny how all these tradespeople had their side hustle with the leftovers that.
Oh yeah,
being
they're using
repurposed.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's left over, like in the brewing situation or a whiskey situation,
Right.
right?
If you had a mill, you were
Right.
distilling alcohol.
Well, it's like you have a mill, you're distilling alcohol.
Right.
What are you going to do with what's left over? All that grain and stuff? Well, you're going to feed it to the hogs.
Right.
And so, I mean, all that stuff, it's like, what? Am I going to throw this stuff out? No, I'm going to use it for some great purpose. Just like the pumpkin bread where you use that pumpkin water. Do I throw that pumpkin water out? No, I'm going to bake bread with it.
Right.
I'm gonna get a couple donations real quick. Thanks everyone who's donated so far. Start with Max are cool. Thank you.
Hey, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Would punch only be served for special occasions, or was it something that would be served any day at a tavern? Colton Elliott, keep doing you. Love your content. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Super nice donation from Nutmeg for Life. Thank you. It
Yes.
says,
Back for life.
here's a little something for punch ingredients.
Well, thank you.
Dr. Trek Wars, thank you. Hi guys, happy Friday. I went out and bought some cider and rum today, so I'm going to try
yeah.
Stone Fence after
Yeah.
work.
Oh, yeah.
I'm super excited too because I'm off to Colonial Williamsburg in 3 weeks.
Oh, wonderful.
That'll be a great,
Cool.
great time.
Yeah.
Debbie Boring, thank you, says, John, talk about the natives catching eels in the river. Could you see it? Could you see it? Someone could show how they would do that. Then there's another donation here. The interface is kind of janky. Oh, Grumpy Michael says, "What's up, broski? How's it going?"
Yeah.
Good. Thanks a lot, everyone.
We're happy here in the Nutmeg
It's going very
Tavern.
well.
Yeah.
It's going
It's
very
funny
well.
when I left the Nutmeg Tavern on Friday, on my way home, I stopped and I got three 6-packs of more ciders to have Stone Fences throughout the week, and it's been a wonderful week. Let me tell you.
Wow. No wonder he's always late to work. Anyway. Oh, on that topic, we were down at Martin Station, and it's not on topic. I'll come back to natives.
all.
I'll come back to natives and eels here in a minute. I don't want to forget that one. But something came up at Martin Station. The folks down there asked about whether Ryan was my son.
Ah,
He's not my son.
baby boy Townsend.
No, see, Townsends you used to be called, or it still is called, but anyway, James Townsend and son, and people say, where's the son? I'm the son. He's not my son. He's just a friend, wonderful coworker, person, employee. He's a lot of things. Great musical artist.
Let's say more nice things about me. Yeah. I really like the.
I love him because
But he's not my
he's
son.
my boy.
He's not my
He's
son.
my
So
boy.
just to clear up all the, Aaron's not my son, although he's almost my son.
Pretty much.
I mean, it seems like. And then Kyle's not my son either, and neither is Josh.
And Kyle and I aren't brothers.
Nope.
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 That's the thing too.
That is a thing.
And John, unlike my father, John's not used to being asked if somebody that's a foot taller than him is his son all the time. So that was probably strange for you.
Yeah, it was interesting.
But we
But we thought we'd clear up that confusion. Okay.
Yeah.
The question about natives and eels and, basically fish traps in general. We did that one video way back when. The Eel River is just a few miles south of here. Runs right through North Manchester, right? Almost right through Ryan's backyard. There was a section of the river that still has an ancient stone weir in it, which is part of a fish trap where they put stones in a kind of a V shape, and they might put lots of little sticks into the bottom of the river. Of course, those are long gone, but it was to channel the fish, channel the eels into a particular location so they could have another kind of trap made with, sticks and twigs and whatnot, kind of like woven into a basket. So the water goes through it and the fish get stuck into it. Eels tend to be usually trapped with, you'd make an eel trap that had, again, like a stick basket, but you'd put like rotting meat into it. That's apparently what eels are like all after. So if you had, something that had gone south on you, or, they didn't have roadkill in the 18th century, but imagine they had roadkill.
Well,
kind of like wagon
I don't think
kill,
it's a ton different than catching crabs now.
Okay, yeah.
It's like you tie a chicken neck or
Yeah,
something like that.
exactly.
A cut of meat that you're not really going
Right.
to use other than for broth into this basket, and you use it as a trap.
Right. And generally, they talked about fairly large cuts. They would talk about, like a horse's head or something really weird.
Oh, really?
Tosseria, something big. But that's generally what's going on with eels. You're going to have bait, whereas the other traps were generally just force them into an area kind of thing. And the Native Americans had very similar technology than what people are also doing in Europe at the same time period. So if you look in Diderot's encyclopedia from the 18th century, you'll see all these same sort of techniques happening close to the seashore, where they will make all these sort of weirs and trap areas, baskets that fish, as the tide goes in and out, the fish will come in, and then they would get trapped in this area, and they would be able to get them when the tide went out again. The river is a one-way kind of tide, and same thing's happening there. There we go.
Were there any other questions in that bunch, Aaron?
I don't think so. I think it was just that one.
Oh, no, there was a punch
Great
question.
punch.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, sir. Yeah, by
was it?
Max are cool.
Yeah.
What was
so
Max? Oh, yeah, perfect. That had to do with whether or not people drank it all the time or whether it was special occasion.
Right.
It's definitely a special occasion thing that some people, if they were fairly well-to-do, hey, every day's a special occasion if you've got the money to buy punch, right? So that's kind of what's going on there. You'll see references to certain kind of people drinking punch all the time.
I had a question for you on this topic from my reading this week.
Okay.
Have you heard of punch houses?
Punch
I
houses.
ran across the term
Like an ale
punch
house?
It's like
Yeah.
an ale house, but it was called a punch house.
No, I have not heard that term before.
I'm going to keep on that and see what
Yeah.
comes of it.
Yeah. Good. So, there's that. Before we go further, let me jump into the next. Let me cross that off. I got that topic. Good. The next thing I wanted to talk about, and really this is sort of, I haven't connected this up with the 18th century enough, but I had to talk about it before I forgot about it. Last night, my wife kind of surprised me. Said, "Oh yeah, we got tickets to a play tonight." What? Okay. Sure, I'll go. And it was a local university, and they had a group in that was working with the university. It's called the Actors from the London Stage. And so they're actors from the London Stage. Anyway, they came in and they were working with the university and student stuff, but they also went and they put on, this group of 5 actors put on Twelfth Night, and the performance was just mind-blowing. It's really incredible because the theater that it was put in, it was Grace's little theater. It's only like 120 seats, so you're right there on the stage. And these guys did an amazing job. It made me think about stage plays in the 18th century and Shakespeare in the 18th century, which is kind of a interesting topic that I need to kind of cover more because it's kind of in a resurgence in that time period, or kind of a rediscovery. as well as the way these folks did their interpretation of Twelfth Night, and very, very. It made me think about how entertainment was done in the 18th century, and specifically how music was part of everyday people's lives, not as a consumption sort of a thing. Oh, I'm going to listen to some real famous person do music, but people just did music. And that's a topic I really kind of dig into and cover over the next year or so at least, because I think it's something that's missing out of our lives today. And they had that. Now they had that because they didn't have any choice. But professional music has come in and sort of usurped music that everyday people would do. And so I want to try to hit that topic. These guys did a bunch of really interesting music inside Twelfth Night. Really, really enjoyed it. If you ever had a chance, especially like this fall, actors from the London stage, wow, they did just a really good job. You have any thoughts on that, Ryan?
Oh, a ton. But we don't have to talk about
Good.
it right now.
Okay. Let's get a couple more questions.
Okay. This one says, "Hi all. In Ireland, they have a traditional fruited bread / cake called barm brack.
Okay.
That's eaten this time of year. Did they have something similar in the 18th century America?"
So
is it like a fruitcake?
yeah,
Sounds like it.
I would imagine.
And is that like what we're thinking, like this really dense thing that we have currently as a fruitcake in 2019? Do you think?
Well, I would say there's interesting things going on with cakes through the 18th century, and we've done a 12th night cake. That's pretty funny that 12th night came up, and then this topic came up, 12th night. 12th night cake is like, or a great cake from the time period is like a fruit cake today. Very dense, lots of fruits in it. And in the early part, the 17th century and early 18th century, that was leavened with yeast, which we do not do today. It's not yeast, or it's not leavened like that at all. There's leavening that comes in. It changes to a leavening that they use where they whip eggs in. And of course, by the time you get to the 19th century and on, it's leavened with chemical leaveners like baking powder or baking soda and an acid. So the idea that it would be a barm cake is a very early style of a cake, 17th century or so. But I don't know about the current barm cake idea.
Yeah, I looked it up. It's essentially just like a sweet bread with, looks like it has some fruit in it, like raisins and stuff. So,
Right.
All right, there you go. What plans do you have after the cabin is finished? A barn, outhouse, canoe trip?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, that thing.
We had a lot of things. But yeah, the canoe trip, we're hoping.
We've always got plans.
Yeah, but whether they come to fruition, it turns out that it takes a lot longer to do these things than sometimes you expect. And things get in the way. Like all of a sudden winter happens. Well, what are we supposed to do with that? What was it, yesterday? We got snow.
Yeah, what's that?
Snow, lots of snow. All our doors were frozen shut this morning. And
I had to scrape my windshield this morning.
yeah, that's way too soon.
That's why I'm late.
Way too soon. Yeah, that's why you're late in July. Anyway, did I say that? Sorry, I was ruining everybody's day. The other thing I want to talk about today, I'll let questions hold off for a little bit.
Didn't really answer that question.
What was it? What was the question?
What plans do we have coming up?
Oh yeah, I was supposed to answer that.
So, one thing. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to let you answer. I was going to take a drink.
Oh, go ahead. Drink and be merry. We want to do. We've got a camping trip that we've got in our heads. We've got a canoe trip
For
in our
winter,
heads.
right?
No, winter. We got plans, but nothing too adventurous. I don't think.
Maybe
I'd
we
like
need
to
a winter camp.
Huh?
Maybe we need a winter
Well,
camp.
I'd be down.
I mean,
do it.
Our friends are ready.
Let's do it.
I'd like to, and I want to spend some nights in the cabin in the winter.
Oh yeah.
We've talked about.
I'll let
some
you
other
sleep under the
buildings
drip.
out there. What's that?
I was going to let you sleep under the drip.
Like Simeon and that blacksmith's cabin. Anyway, we got plans.
Yep, we got plans. We're going to be, hopefully, the canoe stuff is definitely going to be spring or early summer.
It's scary to talk about them because sometimes an idea sounds really cool for 3 days, and then it doesn't sound so great anymore. But if you've said it, you kind of have to do it.
Yeah.
So,
So that's one of the reasons why we don't actually announce things ahead of time, because we don't want to disappoint people, because it happens. Another topic I've driven this guy crazy with this next topic. The thing I really wanted to talk
that's
about.
just jokes. It's really great information.
So this book, nice big thick book, Albion Seed. People have recommended it in the comment section of different videos. I had this book for a long time, but if you look at this book, you're gonna look at this book, it's like, oh gosh, I tend to be the kind of person who will dig into a book and I'll just like randomly say, oh, well, what's in here? And I'll go to page 100 and I'll start reading along. And that's not the best way to necessarily consume a particular book if you really are looking for the whole theme of the book. And many times the only way I can dig into a book like this is to get an audiobook version. That way I'm kind of forced to listen to it from one section to another. Even though I already know kind of what the content's in there, it gives me this whole overview and I can do other kinds of work. I can be working on the cabin and, listening to a book. So I've listened to this book recently and this book is just stunning, and it's a complete concept theme that it's trying to cover, as well as the individual pieces of information in it. And imagine you want to understand North America in the 18th century or North America today, and you want to know where the seeds of all these different kinds of ideas and regionality of what's happening in America. You want to understand the threads that make those things the way they are. Why is the Northeast different from Virginia? Why is Virginia different from Pennsylvania, or Pennsylvania, like Philadelphia area? Why is that so different from Kentucky? This book talks about those very topics, and it also immediately comes to mind with issues and questions that we have many times on the channel. People will say, what did they do for X in the 18th century? Well, that's the answer can be totally, and many times is completely different from one place to another. And this book talks about the reason why those regions are the way they are, and specifically ties them back to where those people originally came from, England usually, and where in England. So even if we're trying to answer a question of something like, oh, in Great Britain in the 18th century, what was X? Again, just like here, the answers can be completely different from East Anglia to the south of England to the border regions between Scotland and England, where these different people groups came from that planted themselves in North America in these different spots. So we get some intense regionality, New England versus Pennsylvania versus Virginia, because of the intense regionality that there was in Great Britain at the time, and may still be for all I know, because I don't travel Great Britain. But again, those border regions, East Anglia versus south of England, totally different concepts about what was appropriate for food, what was appropriate, how their language sounded. Because we think of today, language in Great Britain is very kind of, we think of it, at least here in North America, as very homogenous, all the same kind of. Obviously Scottish is different than that, but we think of that as all one, whereas there's a whole bunch of different accents depending on where you are. Same thing happens in North America, and those North American accents are all derived from 17th century English accents or Great Britain accents, depending on where they're at. So this book covers it all the different aspects of culture, whether it's religion, clothing, what they thought of for laws, how they raised their children, all those topics, food, all those things are covered in this book in such an in-depth way. And then he compares all these different things against each other. But the main premise of the book is, where do we get our idea of liberty and freedom compared to those four groups that come over to North America? I'm telling you, it's a wonderful book. even if maybe every single conclusion isn't exactly right, it gives us a thought pattern to follow and question those ideas. And it really, I mean, opens your eyes about why things are different in different parts of the country. And without those different parts thinking different things, we wouldn't have our concept of liberty and freedom that we have today. So I can't recommend the book enough. If you're interested, I put a link down in the description section. Just a tremendous book.
Have you made it through?
Oh, I've listened to it more than once, and you know, go back. There's this one here. Let me. I always have fun. Remember, here at work, I like to make up words. You know, splendiferous and all these kind of fun words, where you just sort of make up a real complicated word. And in the New England section, there's apparently New England speech is very, very prominent for that sort of thing. Here's a piece written in 1647. It'll be hard for me to get through this because it's hard to read. If the whole conclave of hell, this is a Puritan minister, Nathaniel Ward, if the whole conclave of hell can so compromise exadverse and diametrical contradictions as to compolitize such a multi-monstrous mulfree of heteroclites and quidlibets, quietly, I trust I might say with all humble reverence that they can do more than the Senate of heaven.
Let me get you another drink and you can
Yeah.
try it again.
Yeah,
Sounds like you need
yeah.
more punch.
Yeah.
Well, I can't. You heard an audiobook of this?
Yeah. Oh,
somebody
the
had to
reader
record
is excellent. Oh, the reader is hilarious. Oh, yes. It's a great book. And it's filled with little tiny pieces of things written in those time periods by those people. So you can get a really good, you know, grip on like, why do people in Boston wear brown? Right? It's like Boston's famous for brown. Well, that's part of East Anglian tradition from the 17th century. And this great idea of the New England, which are Puritans, and the people that go in Virginia about 20 years later, they're Cavaliers. And the English Civil War is the Puritans against the Cavaliers. The Puritans left, come to America because of the strife there was. And then when they took over in England, the Cavaliers came here. So you can imagine how unhappy the different people groups were with each other in North America.
Right.
And the idea that they would come together and form the United States is very, very amazing because they hated each other.
Well, and this is why it's so difficult to answer questions that come through the feed about how did they celebrate a
Right.
birthday in the 18th century?
Right, because
just
it's totally different in one place and another. Sometimes it's like we don't celebrate anything. In other places, they were very celebratory.
I've got that book in the chat right now. If people want to go check it out.
Yeah. Can't recommend it enough if you're interested in why we live in the world we live in today.
Any questions about that book, Roland, Kyle?
No,
Okay.
not really.
Good.
This is not a question, but a shout out for Ryan. It says, because of Ryan's shout out last week, I got 60 new followers on Instagram and wanted to say thank you. History from Brad.
Oh,
History from
Or
Brad.
history with Brad, sorry.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Good. Excellent.
Let's see. Back to the top here. What has been your favorite part of the cabin build so far and the least favorite part? All of you answer, please.
Well, I'll answer last. I'll let you guys go first. Ryan?
Let's let Kyle go first.
Kyle?
I gotta think.
All right. Well, my least favorite is probably shaving trees in 90-degree weather. That
Oh,
was
the bark.
The debarking,
Yeah.
yeah.
that wasn't very fun at all.
It's so much better to debark in the spring when you can just peel it off in one big sheet.
My favorite part is probably, I don't know, probably the day that we finished the walls. That was quite the accomplishment, I
Right.
think.
What you got, Aaron?
I mean, I haven't been doing a ton of
hasn't
work.
done
On most
any of the
yeah, I
work.
haven't been doing
He's
nothing.
just holding the camera.
That's
Oh,
right.
come on now.
Even though he will say that he's built.
Oh,
the
yeah.
entire
He's
cabin by
just
himself.
sweating over
my
there.
mind.
Uh-huh.
But from
So as far as like video stuff goes, usually when we shoot for 8 hours, we come out of the shoot with 3
8
videos.
minutes. Yeah.
This is like you shoot for a full day and you have, well, I got a little part of the whole
Yeah.
entire video. So that,
It can be frustrating.
yeah, that's kind of frustrating. And then obviously just, seeing it go up and then getting the videos done and them turning out. So far, they've turned out better than I kind of was hoping they would. So that's been super satisfying.
Typically, a cooking episode or something will take about 20, maybe 24 man hours to produce.
Right.
Doing all the research, doing the shooting, doing the post-production work, and so 24 hours.
24 might even.
Right. It
that's
might
like
even be a
max.
little long. It depends on the cooking episode.
Yeah.
Whereas a cabin video, well, we'll have 4 people working for a week. And
it might get one of the videos
and
out
it
of
might have one video. So they're tremendously time expensive. So we'll have, 200 hours instead of 20 hours in a video. Did you have something to say?
I think it's really cool. Number one, just being a part of that with the people that we've got a good group of people to work with.
Yeah.
That's been a lot of fun. But figuring out tricks along the way to make things more efficient or easier. Even we've been in this for several weeks now, and even last week.
Yeah.
I
All of a
just-
sudden.
I just found out how to make that bark peeling a ton easier.
Yeah.
And it was just from. Sometimes it's like you don't want to try to do something differently because it's like, no, this is the way you do it. And then as soon as you think outside of the box, it's like, oh no, this makes a lot more sense. And so that's been a lot of fun, and that's happened with processes and with tools. We spent the first few days just axing at stuff before we started using the axes as chisels and using mallets, and so we've just continued to refine, and that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a part that I particularly hated.
Yeah, I think straight up from the dislike part, it's just the slow progress, and that's painful because we're squeezed by the weather, or we're squeezed by the cost of doing it, and that I've got these other projects already building in my mind. Oh, I want to do this. I want to do
the
that.
other responsibilities, right? Because you want to be there when you're there.
Right.
But
And I got a lot of
I
other
have to leave to do other things, and that's kind of a bummer.
Right.
Well, I remember it kind of hit everyone pretty quick that, because we were like, oh, this might take a couple weeks. And then as those walls started going, it was
it's
like,
this is
I don't
not-
know if this is going to take a couple weeks.
Yeah.
We might take a couple weeks to get the walls up.
Yeah.
And then it's like, we're doing the
Right.
chimney right now. And
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, man.
Yeah, and the fireplace and chimney is going to take seemingly forever compared to fixing up the walls, which is going to go very, very fast.
Right.
So Yeah.
It's been cool turning into a work crew, like knowing what your partner needs before they say what they need, because you're in a groove with them working.
Yeah, and you can really start to speed up when you don't have to talk. It's like, oh, they're going to need this, they're going to need that. So yeah,
It's definitely been an undertaking.
Did you have a favorite
sure.
part, John?
every time I see another section done like today, that picture I showed you guys, you see that and you're like, oh, this
there
is
it
so,
is.
this is so nice to see it, where it's really starting to come together. So that's my favorite part. The done part is the favorite part.
It was cool working on like how the cabin looked. I got some footage of you like messing with the inside of the fireplace, and it's like, ooh, looks pretty awesome.
Yeah, the fireplace has been neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, neat but time consuming.
Right.
Yeah.
I definitely it's a learning process. It's like, oh, I should have done this, or I should have made it this size or that size, and you don't know until you do it, and then you say, "Am I a dummy?"
Yeah, I haven't even seen the chimney part yet. I'm pretty excited to see it. So
While we're here, let me talk about Patreon really quick. So a lot of folks support us. 564 people support us on Patreon by giving like $2 a month or $5 a month or whatever that is appropriate to them. They want to help us make videos, even like the cabin videos. Cabin videos are really expensive to make, and and YouTube is like, I'm not so happy with it. So it takes a different kind of support to make those things possible, and other kinds of videos that we want to make possible. Like we want to bring in some people about music, but like especially for a live stream. So that takes a special kind of support. There are people who support us that way. The new folks that support us this week: Haley Flagg, Judy Bonnet, Clinton Roselle, Matthew Damon, Andrea Albert, Becky Ruiz, and some people also just send us a little bit of money by PayPal, and that's probably the PayPal version of giving us money has got the least amount of overhead, so it's the most bang for the buck. Charles Rose, Melvin Jackson, both supported us through PayPal itself. Again, thank you. All those links, if you want to help us in that way, those links are down in the description of this video.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
super thank you guys.
Appreciate it. I'm going to grab some donations real quick.
Sure.
And then we'll keep going with some questions. Where'd we leave off? Okay, here we go. Red Runner 328. John, I was wondering if I came to the shop, could I meet you? It would be an honor. Would it be weird if I wore my Civil War uniform?
No, it wouldn't. You go ahead, and I'll come back to him.
ULF Hulin, thank you. Brenda Boyd, thank you. History with Brad, thank you. Did frontiersmen wear linen frocks instead of fur? And then this glitchy software. Hang on, I gotta scroll up through the chat to find this one. David Dinelli, thank you.
Thank you.
Great live stream. Thanks for all the great content. And that's all I got right now. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys again for your support. The question about the store visit. You can wear anything you want. They're not going to be weird, especially in town. I'm always walking around town in weird clothes. The people at the bank are used to me walking in with who knows.
They don't even ask anymore.
Right. It's like I'll wear destroyed clothes and my hair's and then the next day I'll be wearing this outfit and they're like, oh, he's that guy. Just let him go and do his thing.
Don't bother.
Yeah, don't bother. You don't want to get him upset.
Don't make eye contact.
You're not gonna surprise anybody by wearing
we've had
your fun outfit.
folks show up in all sorts of clothing to the store, and it just feels right when that happens.
Right. If you want to, try to make sure to catch me and say hi to me, again, I am like as hard to get a hold of as anybody in the universe because I might be in Virginia, I might be out working on the cabin, or I might be in the store in the basement trying to fix a pipe or fix somebody's computer. So if you want to try to catch me, the best thing to do is to check in ahead of time and say, I'm going to be visiting on Wednesday afternoon at 2. Is John going to be able to be available? And then you'll at least be able to, if I can adjust my schedule, I'll try to. If I won't be available, you'll know that. So you really need to check ahead.
One above, by checking ahead, a phone call to customer service is probably the best way to do that.
Yes.
Too. Emails, I would call.
Yes.
Real quick, someone's saying, when will the fireplace video be watched? So the plan right now,
it's got to get done first.
Right. The plan right now is Monday we're gonna post a video on the chinking process of and sealing the cabin. I'm hoping the following Monday to have the chimney video up, but we'll see how it
might
goes.
be a cooking episode.
Or it might be, we have a cooking episode in the
hopper. Yeah.
In the hopper.
It's probably safe to say within 3 weeks of
Yeah.
Monday.
If not, a week from Monday, it would be 2 weeks from Monday.
Yeah, it really all depends on the progress of what happens on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday next week.
Right now we're at the mercies of the weather on a lot of that
But Monday,
stuff.
Tuesday, Wednesday is supposed to be pretty good weather, so
Right.
we should be able to start to move.
But a lot of that process is working with clay, and if it's cold, you can't really work with clay like you need to. So we're really trying to get as much done on the nice days as we possibly can.
I still cannot imagine how they made clay fireplaces on December 25th
Yeah.
in 1777.
Crazy.
That's got to be crazy.
Yeah. Those were some impressive men.
Yeah.
Somebody says hopefully the chimney video won't go up in smoke.
Oh,
That's funny.
I had to read that.
So there was the question about linen frocks versus
Fur.
and I mean, you're probably talking about hunting frocks in the time period.
I
Very
think he said frontiersman specifically, didn't he?
Hang on. Frontiersmen, yeah.
right. So the hunting frocks in the time period are a tricky item. There's very few illustrations of hunting frocks. There are many descriptions of hunting frocks from this 18th century and early 19th century time period. So while you got a little bit of artwork, very little bit, a few descriptions or some descriptions, probably the most of all things, and then a very few extant examples of pieces from the time period. You can count them on your one hand, the number of pieces that are from this time period, even though it was extremely popular. But the vast majority are made out of linen. There might be some cotton ones in there, especially from a later time period, because cotton starts to get more popular in the 1780s, 1790s. There's, I think, a single leather version of that. Most people are probably making them out of linen for that time period, because they were likely made in that backwoods area where people would be able to weave their own linen. That is really kind of a guess. It's a tricky garment.
I would go. Now this is all speculation, so it's dangerous. But I know also that linen is just easier to work with for sewing a garment than fur is.
They're leather, yeah.
Well, I thought he asked about fur.
He did fur, but I think he probably means just straight up leather. I don't think there's any fur example.
And yeah, as far as fur goes, I mean, you can have a side of fur and you can use that as an extra layer, as a blanket or something. But
as a frock, I don't think so. I think that was the only other question I had in that group.
What you got, Kyle?
I have a ton of questions. That's what I have.
Literal ton.
A literal. When would they serve West India punch? Was it for occasions or everyday drink?
So I'm just jumping in there when it comes to punch. Sorry.
Punch away.
From what I can tell, what we've created today is not something that they were serving a ton of. This is something that they were experiencing when they would go to West India, and they're coming back and putting their own spin on it. So this is where punch is derived from. But just what was that? We did another recipe. I think it was a cooking video where it was like, it was the pepper pot, right?
Yeah, pepper pot.
Where it was like, this is our spin on it. It's very different from what pepper pot actually was, because they did their English version to it or whatever was hot at the time, you know. So I can't speak on that, but I would say that this sort of punch, this is not what they were serving. They were doing something more elaborate.
There we go.
Did towns/villages in the 18th century have festivals or social gatherings on a regular basis? If so, what types and were visitors welcome?
Well, the topic is great. This book will cover that. New England, they generally where the whole community would come together would be church or market days. And they weren't as big into particular kind of holidays. If you're in Pennsylvania and you're in Quaker land, they definitely were not into holidays or religious holidays at all. They were very much like Christmas. That's a regular work day, just like every other day. Virginia are going to have a lot more market days and religious holidays, very popular in that area. So it really depends on where you're at. Both in Great Britain and in North America in the time, they had all those different kinds of variations about whether or not, there were different kinds of celebrations and whether or not the whole community would come together or whether it was kind of just individual families.
How was salt a valuable commodity sold in the 18th century and early 19th century? Was it sold granulated as it is today, or maybe in a cake or block like sugar was during that time? How was it sold?
No, I don't have the form of, I don't have as good a quick answer for. I mean, I think it's going to come a lot more like, rock salty, kind of big granules, but that's only guess, because they would ship. It's like we talked about in the George Washington salting the fish episode. I think that was where we did the shad that was roasted. I think we talked about salting the shad at the time period. And he was importing his salt from Portugal.
Yeah.
So salt was not a big product that was created here in North America in that 18th century context, but that it was imported. There were different sections of the world that kind of specialized in salt. Apparently, like Portugal was one of those. And it wasn't until later on in the 19th century that there were particular parts in North America that would specialize in making salt. But exactly the form of it, I wish I could answer that one.
Will you be doing a Thanksgiving special? I'd like to know more about what would have been used. I'm sorry. I'd like to know more about what would have been around at the first Thanksgiving, please.
So Thanksgivings is an interesting topic, and there's more than one Thanksgiving that we base our Thanksgiving upon. Some really interesting stuff if you dig into Thanksgiving. At Plymouth Plantation, they talk about Thanksgiving, and it wasn't that like first day of Thanksgiving that we maybe kind of think about wasn't particularly set on a particular day, but it was set on a particular occasion, and it went with another day. There was a day of what was it? Day of consolation, day of something. Anyway, they were having this horrible, horrible drought, and it was devastating to the colony. And they called I think it was a day of humiliation, where they were like, God's punishing us. We need to pray about this thing, and we need to not eat. We need to do a special thing to call upon to humiliate themselves because they were concerned that they were being too proud. So they had this day of humiliation, and I think it was that day that it started to rain. But after a few weeks or a month or some time period after that, they had a lot of success in what they were doing agriculturally and food, all those things. And so they called for a day of Thanksgiving to kind of pair up with that day of humiliation. So it was about saying thanks about that particular thing. That's that first Thanksgiving. And it's, the food for that is, what was available at the time. I don't have a great answer for that. I would look at the Plymouth Plantation website for that. I think there's probably some information there about that. But then there are different kinds of Thanksgiving days in that same tradition of how do we say thanks that happened during the Revolutionary War and at different times in this 18th century context. It wasn't until we sort of cement Thanksgiving Day in, I don't know, the 19th century or whatever that was, that it's solidified into our tradition today. You get, as for food things, we do have a Thanksgiving kind of playlist. That was many years ago. When did we do that Thanksgiving series?
2014.
4 years.
Yeah, 2014.
Or 15, I can't remember.
Yeah, and
still really good.
Yeah, we covered all the great topics doing a roast turkey in a time period fashion. We did like cranberries, which are really very interesting, very North American.
Maybe a sweet potato pudding?
I think something to do with sweet potatoes.
Stuffing.
There's the stuffing. There's a pumpkin pie in that one, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
So they're all from Amelia Simmons's first American cookbook, right from the late 18th century. So boom, right on the time period. All very, very Thanksgiving-y recipes out of that cookbook. Great series. Check that one out.
Is Albion Seed talking about Thanksgiving at all?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Maybe.
Right.
A little bit.
I got some donations. Then we probably want to move it kind of into the lightning round. It's about
Woo,
five
yes,
till.
go.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's
Man,
flying by.
It's a I told
Fun
you it was
time.
We must be
It
having
was
a
action
blast.
packed.
Having a good time,
Action packed.
2 donations from Jim Lindley. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Says, what snacks would you eat with this type of punch? And then
Oh,
Keltoid
yeah.
5, thank you, says for the team. Thank you.
Thank
That's all I got
you.
for
Thank
today.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Snacks.
Yeah.
That's a tricky question because there aren't as many ideas about snacks. The only snack that comes to my mind that was mentioned in this book, or actually I would think it was mentioned in English Society in the 18th century, fried oysters. Was a snack thing like chips are today, like potato chips or something, or French fries. Fried oysters. Maybe that. You think fried oysters are good?
I don't think that I would like that too much with this. I really don't. I like fried oysters. But I don't think that it would
So
go.
no would be the answer.
Maybe it's some cheese.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Cheese.
That helps close the stomach.
Yeah, someone in chat was saying cheese. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got some. I got to do a taste test. I keep forgetting it. I've got some Cheshire cheese, some real live Cheshire cheese to try out during the live stream. Keep forgetting to bring it in. It's probably going to turn into a great green lump before I
I
get
can
to
see
it.
the bottom of your glass. What do you think about this punch? Should people try it at home?
Yeah.
I've had 3 glasses. So, I like it.
You're gonna have somebody else drive you home
Yeah,
there.
for
huh?
sure. man.
But I can see you. Can
You
see
let the horse take you? Is that the idea?
You can see the bottom of your glass. I can see the bottom of the punch bowl.
Yeah, John's feeling it. We better do this lightning round. Get him to bed.
Ryan just jumps up on the horse and says, "You know where to go."
Just take me there.
All right, lightning round. Here we go. Has anyone slept in the cabin yet?
Maybe some mice. That's about it.
There's been one mouse in particular that likes to live
Like,
there.
get out of here.
Will there be any videos on furniture making for the cabin?
Undoubtedly. Undoubtedly.
Did you sink the canoes yet?
I've been thinking about sinking the canoe like this, especially since it froze. It was this morning. It was 25 degrees.
Oh,
Now,
yeah, should
now
probably
we
get
have
that
twice
water.
as many canoes as we had a week ago because they're all cracked in half.
Yeah. Whoops. No. The tulip canoe we will sink, and we have to sink it soon. The 2 cottonwood canoes, they'll be fine. We'll just put them in the barn or cover them up. Cover them up at the start.
What drinks were commonly imported in the 18th century?
Drinks imported. They were even importing beers, definitely, in the 18th century into North America. Wines, obviously. Rum, obviously. Some of that stuff was being made here on, we would import the sugar and then make the rum.
I'm guessing gin was imported.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
All of the drinks.
John, do you ever make field recipes for reenactments?
Very rarely. Usually when we go to a reenactment, we're involved with other things. We're trying to, interact with people or shoot videos or whatnot. Although shooting videos is almost important, almost impossible at an event.
Our kind friends are usually feeding us.
Yeah, thankfully.
Did bartenders have to use a gavel or a cudgel to keep order?
Guaranteed.
I keep order without one.
Rum.
Thank you very much.
And my last one, did people know about ice cream in the 18th century?
Oh yeah, ice cream, sure. There's the Parmesan ice cream episode. You definitely.
If you open any cookbook, you're gonna find 12 ice creams. It's nuts.
No, that's not true.
Yeah. Oh.
But
Jeez.
some. I just had to do that. There are some recipes that are very ice cream heavy. And ice cream was popular in the time period. And check out the Parmesan ice cream episode. It makes a wonderful ice cream. I think there was
That's
always
it?
was oyster ice cream.
Is that
too.
the end of lightning round?
That's-
Did you know
That's,
you're in
that
lightning
probably should be
round?
the end of the stream.
Yeah.
It's 5 o'clock.
It's we're starting to break up here.
John done.
John's done. John's well past.
I'd like to see you finish that glass on
No
camera.
way.
Bye, everybody.
Okay. Here's my. Much better.
Do your thanks.
Yeah,
Say goodbye,
say
John.
thank you,
We are
John.
Say goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Patreon supporters, for supporting us. People for donating on the live stream. Thank you for your wonderful questions and shares.
He's doing.
We're getting rude and clamorous around here.
Truly, we couldn't do it without you. Thanks for watching.